A huge thank you to patron Adam Wetstein for suggesting today's video topic. If you want to suggest a topic for next Wednesday's Name Explain video, then all you have to do is support Name Explain on Patreon for $1 a month. Find out more by visiting patreon.com/Name Explain, which will be linked down below. Anyway, in 1585, a British ship landed on the island of Roanoke, just off the coast of modern North Carolina. The intentions of this ship was to found the first permanent British settlement in the New World. European interest in this vast landmass across the Atlantic Ocean exploded in the wake of Christopher Columbus's voyages in the land. Despite that wider narrative, Columbus was not the first European in this land, and of course, the land was far from uninhabited prior to any kind of European arrival. The island of Roanoke specifically was teeming with life, being home to the Socotan and Croatan people for a very long period prior to the arrival of these British ships. Nonetheless, the British and these people found themselves co-inhabiting the island, well, for a little bit of time anyway. Infamously, we don't know what exactly happened to the now lost colony of Roanoke. Despite the failures of this first attempt, the British tried again and were just a tad more successful. While the Roanoke colony didn't go to plan, it was the ultimate start of a much larger relationship, that being the relationship between the language of English and the Algonquin language of the Socotans and Croatans. This Algonquin language isn't the only one to be found in North America, and specifically the United States. These tongues and their speakers are often collectively referred to as Native Americans. Now, Native American is just one of the many collective names these people who arrived in the land prior to the Europeans go by. These titles can range from fairly outdated, like calling them Indians, to more recent suggestions like First Nation people. What they should be called collectively is a topic unto itself, but for now, I'll just stick with Native Americans. These Native Americans split into different tribes such as the Cherokee, the Navajo, Choctaw, Sioux, and Apache, to name some of the more well-known of ones. Tribes have different cultures, identities, and languages. These languages fall into unique families native to this land, like the Algic family, which contains the Algonquin languages like Cree and Arapaho, as well as the Iroquois family, which houses the likes of Cherokee and Huronian. Estimates vary, but it's believed that people arrived in North America some 30,000 years ago, crossing a no longer existing land bridge, which connected Russia and modern Alaska. These tongues ruled the roost for thousands of years. English, meanwhile, has only had a permanent presence in the land for just under 500 years. But in this relatively short time, English has asserted itself as the USA's #1 tongue. This, unfortunately, came at a high price for the natives, as their culture, land, and lives were destroyed during the British colonization of North America. Thankfully, many native tribes were not wiped out entirely, and in pockets across the USA, their old way of life can still be found, as well as their languages too. Slight tangent, but I just finished watching the first season of Reservation Dogs. Go watch it. It explains modern native life in the USA way better than I, a bloke sitting behind a computer in England, ever could. Anyway, languages carried on for the natives in their own way, but words of Native American languages have found a home somewhere else too, that being in English. Native tongues and English have shared a home in the USA for around 500 years. You don't share land for that long and not expect there to be some cross-pollination between the tongues. Because of this, English has borrowed a variety of words from various native languages, which are heard not only in the English spoken in the USA, but also in other versions of English too. Some of these words we hear of Native American roots are still really tied to these people, but some, however, have integrated much more into wider English, and you may not even be aware that they are from the languages of these people who have called North America home for so long. But let's get some of those more obvious ones out of the way first. Take a word like totem. This is the name for an object of some kind, which is seen as emblematic of a group of people. It's most commonly heard in the term of totem pole, things that are seen as definitively Native American. The word is seen as coming from the Ojibwa language, and their word of Odudaman, which means kin or clan. Likewise, teepee is from the Dakota language and simply means house. Wigwam means house/home too, but in the Algonquin language of Eastern Abenaki instead. A weapon deeply linked to Native Americans is the tomahawk. This is an axe of sorts, and its name directly relates to this fact, as it comes from the Powhatan and their word for a hatchet. Funnily enough, the word to many English speakers may be more linked to a specific kind of stake than an axe. The tomahawk stake is named directly after the weapon, down to the fact that they are similar to one another in appearance. All these words are of native origins and can be heard within English. But as mentioned, we aren't entirely surprised, as even to this day, things like totems, tomahawks, and teepees are deeply linked with natives still. Things not as deeply linked with Native Americans, however, are the various animals whose English names derive from their languages. When English speakers first arrived in the Americas, they would have come across creatures unlike ones they'd seen back in Europe. Instead of concocting new names for these beasts, they instead borrowed the names the natives were already using for them. Take the moose in example, a creature more linked with the USA's northern neighbour of Canada. Their name comes from the Eastern Abenaki word of moose, which means one who strips bark from trees, in relation to the way moose use their antlers to remove bark from the trees around them. Likewise, raccoons aren't found in Europe either, and their name shows us this fact. It comes from the Virginian Algonquin arakun, meaning he who scratches with hands. This comes from the fact that raccoons are very capable with their front paws, being able to use them in a similar way we humans use our hands. Another creature not native to Europe and the old English speaking world are skunks. Skunk comes from Algonquin roots too and means squirter. This comes from their lovely habit of squirting smelly fluids at their foes to scare them away. Opossum comes from the Powhatan yet again and means white animal in relation to their fur colour. And chipmunk comes from Ojibwa and means one who descends trees headlong, thanks to the fact they scurry down trees head first. Native languages didn't just name mammals however. The terrapin, a kind of turtle that can be found all across the world now thanks to people releasing them as pets, like seriously you can find them in ponds in England, have names with native roots too. It simply derives from an Algonquin word meaning turtle. Beyond animals, however, we have place names too. So many places in the USA have names of native origins. Some derive from native words, while others are named literally after tribes who lived there first. Both North and South Dakota, in example, are named after the Dakota people. Their name simply means allies. Wisconsin is too named after a tribe, but the origin of their name seems uncertain. Mississippi, which is the name of a state, as well as the river that runs through multiple states, comes from the Ojibwa tongue and fittingly means Great River. Utah is named after the Ute people, and Missouri has a titular tribe too. Tennessee is of Cherokee origins and means bend in the river. Likewise, Minnesota is named after its waters too, with the word being of Sioux origins meaning cloudy water. Wyoming is thought to come from the Delaware language and mean extensive plains, which makes sense as a large amount of the state is open land. And then of course we have Indiana. The state doesn't get its name from one specific tribe, but instead from that older collective name of Indians. That's just states with names of native roots. There's countless counties, towns, and cities too which have native names. Honestly, this whole video could have just been places with names of native origin in the USA. Also, this is probably the most US state names I've explained in a single video. I know a lot of people want me to make one big video explaining how every state got their name, and for years I planned on doing that video when we hit $1,000 a month on Patreon to celebrate that monumental feat. Hitting that goal on Patreon would secure Name Explain's future for the long run, so if you enjoy the channel or want to see that video, please do consider donating over there. Impromptu Patreon plug aside, we also have a collection of words from native origins that you may not even be aware come from these roots. Today, the things these words represent really aren't massively linked to Native Americans anymore, and are just used in the wider language. Hickory, the name for a kind of tree, comes directly from an Algonquin word, an example. Today it's linked to a kind of smoked food, and dickory clocks of course. Another tree with a name of native roots is the huge sequoia. This tree is directly named after one Native American, a Cherokee man named Sequoia, who created a writing system for his own language. The trees were named in his honor. Toboggan, the name for a kind of sled, also has its roots in an Algonquin language too. Pecan is simply an Algonquin word for nuts, but today is used for a specific kind of nut which is eaten all across the world. Caucus is a really interesting one. It is used in politics to mean a meeting of sorts. It is once again from Algonquin roots and means an elder or advisor. And finally we have Mohawk. This is the name for a kind of spiked up hairstyle and comes directly from the name of a tribe. They wore their hair in this unique fashion, and when punk rockers started to wear their hair in a similar manner, the name for this tribe got applied to them too. This shows us just how many words we use in English derive from the many native languages of the country we now call the USA, from animals to places to random things. This integration of native words into English, however, as mentioned, came at a great price. The first English people in the USA took so much from the natives, and this has included words from their languages too. This whole video has focused primarily on the languages found in the modern USA. Other languages found across wider North America and South America have had a huge impact on English too, but we can talk about them another time. Name Explained depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/Name Explain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT, and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.